Right, we'll start assembling some of this stuff. That should just slide down on those splines. Yeah, getting all this stuff in place is always entertaining. Even getting it in the right place is tricky sometimes. Right, so let's start with this lot. Apply some synthetic grease to the inside of this. Put its screw post in place, and that should fit right here. So that meshes with the gear on the top, that little pinion on the top of the take-up spool there. I will open that front up so this thing stays where it's put. I'll just put a touch of grease on that tips of those gears. That'll distribute itself nicely. And the cam surfaces there, I'll do the same for that. There's a little cam on the top surface here. That's where it interacts with the levers to control the film advance. Okay, that looks good. Let's get that, make sure that screws tight. Now getting these other levers in place. Oh, I think we can put the springs in place first. There are two springs. This one here. And those are shoulder screws that hold those in place. And this one here. This one's a bit trickier because the spring wants to pop underneath that gear. That will let it. See? Okay, so the washer with a small hole in it, this lever, the washer with the large hole in it, this lever, and there's a screw post that runs through that. I'm just going to wipe that shoulder on there with some molybdenum paste. Synthetic grease would do the job just as well. And we've got to get that down through those two levers, those two washers, and screw it into that top plate without disturbing anything. Easy. The spring at the back, this one here, pull that under that lever, back up in there and up into there. Now that's not sitting correctly, so that spring is just shifted from where I had it put. Let's just take that off. This end of the spring should be back over here. Must have moved while I was putting the screw down. Let's get that in place. There would have been no tension where it was sitting there. Put that in place. Let's pop our little gear back on there. Get the spring out underneath this lever. back up behind the lever, like that. So that's now sprung loaded. This one here, that's more entertaining. I have to get this spring under here and behind the little boss on that lever. Of course, it doesn't want to go quietly. Yeah, it's done. The shutter release. I'll apply some molybdenum paste to the inside of that and a white in the body casting here and here, and this has to go over the shaft down in the body. Of course you can't see what you're doing, that just makes it more fun. Okay, that's in place. While I've got this molybdenum paste here, I'll apply some to this lever. That comes up through that slot there, and some on this post, because that pin has to run down over it. Now I'll zoom you in a bit, you can watch the action of this. And as I revolve the sprocket with my thumb, you'll see that the cam here revolves, and as it revolves it picks up the tip of this lever, pulls it back. As it pulls it back, it engages with the gear at this point, locking the film advance. Everything's locked at that stage. The film is holding the tension on the sprocket, so everything stays where it's put. You cock the shutter and you press this. That pulls this lever back, releasing it from here, releasing it from the cam, and then you're ready to wind on again for the next shot. So that's all working as it should do. That looks pretty good to me. I'll put the film advance lever back on the camera, I think. Now that's our rewind there. That little collar goes on there, it centres up on there. And our advance knob is this one. And why is that locking up? Have I not got that seated correctly? I don't think that gear's seated correctly. No, it's sitting up in the air. Let's get that off and move it. Is it trapped on top of that lever? I think it is. Yeah, it's sitting on top of that lever instead of sitting down. Let's try it now. That's better. Why is that not dropping in? Okay, so that acts as the ratchet. It'll only move in one direction. When you swing the rewind across the lever, that lifts that tab out of the way, and this will be able to, the film will be able to wind back into the cassette. And as you move this, it immediately swings this back out of the way, allowing that ratchet pull to drop back in place. So that's moving nicely. That part's good. Let's get this in place. That mask sits over there. this arm goes through there, and we'll want that frame counter wheel running on there. I'll put a touch of synthetic grease in there. Sit that in there. Normally that spring sits over the back of that to hold that in place. Okay, so this little wheel, you see with the ears, you can just see this. This sits in here like this. This post runs through there and screws into the top plate. And the spring is this beast here. It goes on the post and it goes this way because it pushes that arm out there. So I normally chuck it down through the slot in the back here, hook it over the post, get it in here against that thing, swing the arm back through, hook it over that spring post there. Oh, you're going to do it for me? It should just hook over this post, but it doesn't want to. Something's a bit bent, I think. Try swapping that over. Oh yeah, the spring's a bit damaged here. Let's try swapping that over. The other end might be better. I'll have a look at it. Well, it looks pretty symmetrical to me. Let's try it the other way. That just sits there. That's funny, that's not sitting down as flat as I would expect it to. But it does work. So it needs to be sprung loaded so that we have to push this in order to engage the frame counter, which sits on top of this post here. Now that's okay. That'll work nicely. And that film advance works smoothly too, so far so good. I can't close up the top cover yet because I've got to put the rangefinder back. And of course the rangefinder hasn't been serviced yet. Let's have a look at this. This is quite a it's a fairly early one for a Type 011, I'd say, just looking at this. So I'll unhook this spring to start off with. Unscrew this screw from the pivot. Oh, that's very, very tight. Okay. No, that's going to need some thumping in order to free that up, I can just tell. What have I got that I can put in there? I really want a larger screwdriver. It's a bit dangerous and it's not working anyway. That might roll, will that go in there? No, that doesn't want to go down in there either. Alright, I'm going to have to give this some treatment, I think. Or some mistreatment, as the case may be. Well, that is not coming loose. Okay. I'll see what I can do about that. I was able to get loose using these crimp leg pliers. Now you'd never know there was a problem. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. Some of these early ones were a bit different. There's that screw, as you'd normally expect if you were doing a Retina II, 2A, something like that. Oh yeah, we haven't got a wavy washer. We've got this spring disc washer. The plain washer on the top, of course. And the brass bushing, much as you have with a Retina 2A. I'll just mark that so I can get that back in exactly the same position. And the glass here is very grimy, it's very hazy looking. That's got that free from there. I want to clean this in the ultrasonic cleaner to clean the semi-silvered mirror. I want to strip these components out of here first. So the rear glass, the eyepiece glass if you like, we'll have that out. This mask on the front needs to come off, because I can tell you from experience that if you put that through the ultrasonic cleaner, it cleans the paint off and it comes out nice and shiny. So we've just got our semi-silvered mirror in here. Now this mirror is in pretty good shape. There's a bit of dust on the front surface. Now I could clean that with a cotton bud, no problem at all. The rear surface is the one with the silver on it. That's more suspect. You can wipe the silvering off typically. I'll just get these two screws out of here. They hold the prism in. They also serve for the vertical alignment at the rangefinder images. A little bit damaged looking, like someone's had a go at them. And this piece can be cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner, and I'll clean that in a small glass with hot water and a drop of domestic dish soap. And here I'm just making sure I clean off any grease from where the arm ran, because I don't want that contaminating the water, because then it just tends to end up as a light general haze on the glass and you end up having to do it again. Okay, so that's good. That's for the ultrasonic cleaner. This can be cleaned manually. I'll clean all the metal surfaces with some naphtha. The prism, we have two surfaces, the front surface that you can see there, and the inside surface you can see at the back. Those are the two surfaces we can clean. The other one is silvered and it's covered in black paint on top of that, and it looks pretty good anyway. Okay, I've got to change the battery on this video camera too, because it's flashing at me crazily. Right, things have happened. I cleaned this in the ultrasonic cleaner. Looks nice and sparkling now, and I can start putting stuff back together. I'll get this mask back in position. The semi-silvered mirror looked quite good really. Can't say it was particularly dirty. Most of the problem here was on that front lens here, on the arm. However, it's even better now. Right, so Here is the eyepiece lens. I just cleaned that with some glass cleaner and a cotton bud. That's a simple job. This rangefinder is very much like rangefinders on the later Retina II type 014 or the Retina 2A for that matter. Here's the arm. I'll just give this a wipe with some molybdenum paste and through the centre where the brass bush will run. And the brass bush of course has a little mark on it that I put there so I know where it went. And the reason I do that is even though those bushes are almost certainly just circular, because they've got a cutout in them, they probably act a little bit like an eccentric. And I want this to line up pretty much exactly where it was, so I don't have a lot of adjustment to do to it. That looks right. It can go on the body here. And we'll need to give this a little bit of a wipe with some molybdenum paste, because that's where that dished washer will run. And I can see I'm up against the perennial dying battery problem with this camera. That solid washer goes on the top. And the pivot screw. Let's get that spring back over its slot there. Well, I'm drifting off the camera all the time, must have it too far away from me. Do that up tight, check that the arm moves smoothly, and it does. Get the spring through this, the pin through the spring, stretch that out into position. That's moving nicely, and put the prism back. Prism has been cleaned, again just using a cotton bud and some domestic glass cleaner. Clean the two surfaces that are available. Surface at the back, of course, the angled surface is silvered and it's covered in black paint, so you've got no access to that. Interestingly, on later cameras on the Retina 2Cs and 3Cs, they relied totally on total internal reflection. They had no mirrored surface on the prism at all. Well, these screws don't want to go in, they must be a bit damaged. Right, well I'll check this out the window and see what it looks like. Well, it looks nice and clear. My moving image is low, so I want to slacken the screw at the back, tighten the screw at the front, and check again. Oh, that is very, very close. It's certainly so close that it's pointless doing anything else with adjustments until I've got that on the camera body. So I'll do that next. Okay, we'll get this back on the camera body. I'll put a couple of dots of lacquer here so that the rangefinder doesn't have any enthusiasm for moving. Rangefinders are only held down with the screws, and if the camera gets dropped, that's not enough to stop the rangefinder moving on the camera, and so your settings will be gone. So it's putting a touch of lacquer under there just means that it's very unlikely to shift, unless it's been dropped from a great height, of course, in which case there's probably going to be more problems than just the rangefinder. I'll see if I can get that screw seated. It didn't fall nicely, but it's fallen in now. And get its mate in place. Yeah, it would have been very nice if when they made the cameras they had a dowel, locating dowels to locate that rangefinder, so that it was fixed in a situation like this. You would probably have one locating dowel right at one end of the rangefinder housing and one right at the other end, and that would make it less likely to move compared to anything else. Okay, so now I've just got to check this by looking out the window, adjust my horizontal alignment and my vertical alignment if it needs it.